House of the Dragon gives us the Iron Throne we deserve. Game of Thrones turned the Iron Throne into a pop culture icon, but House of the Dragon gives us a more grandiose and menacing version of the coveted chair. Fans of the Game of Thrones novels and TV series have been waiting for the debut trailer of the long-awaited prequel, House of Dragons, and it finally came. This time we're going back to the time where Westeros was ruled by House Targaryen, with fire and blood. One of the most outstanding things about the debut trailer of House of the Dragon is that we get a glimpse of the Iron Throne, but it looks very different from what we remember. This royal seat is the symbol of supremacy, and now it looks more the part. It's a more faithful reflection of George R.R. Martin's vision, so it looks a lot more intimidating. The Iron Throne construction. Over a century before the events of House of Dragons, Balerion the Black Dread, which was Aegon the Conqueror's dragon, melted 1,000 blades with his fiery breath, which was then worked on by blacksmiths to make the Iron Throne. The blades were surrendered to the Targaryens by their defeated enemies in the War of Conquest, so the Iron Throne became a symbol of their superiority. George R.R. Martin has always said that the Iron Throne is a mammoth of a seat. He describes it as towering over the room, and it's not necessarily aesthetic or comfortable to sit on. It's an asymmetrical, ugly beast, which makes sense considering it was made by a dragon and blacksmiths, not expert furniture manufacturers. It's worth noting that though the House of the Dragon gives us a more threatening version of the Iron Throne, it's still not exactly as described by Martin's words. If we go back to the novels, the royal seat is over 10 feet tall, so steps have to be climbed to reach it. Because it's so tall, it gives its occupant a looming, almost godly presence, and the sun coming from the windows in the Red Keep cast a sinister shadow. The Iron Throne is simply frightening and very much impractical, especially because the melted swords are still sharp, and they poke out. Additionally, the fang steel behind makes it impossible for the occupant to sit back. The royal seat is intentionally uncomfortable because Aegon I claimed a king should never sit easy. An evil seat. The Iron Throne is meant to be a visual representation of bad vibes, and according to Martin, Mark Simonetti's take on the royal seat truly captures what he intended to portray in the novels. Of course, the artist Simonetti still made some changes to make it more practical for the show, but overall, he captured the evil aesthetic Martin was going for. Martin's work has repeatedly focused on how impractical the structure of the Iron Throne is, and the effects it can have on people's psyche. A Feast for Crows explains this very well. Aerys II Targaryen, also known as the Mad King, is a great example of that, because he was essentially tormented by the throne. The Mad King was covered in half-healed cuts and scabs from his time on the seat. So, one could say that the throne constantly tortured him, and it's not difficult to see how it could be a contributing factor to his madness. That madness would become the reason for Robert's rebellion, which would lead to the eventual destruction of the House Targaryen. Far from Game of Thrones' Iron Throne. The House of the Dragon's take of the iconic seat is very different from what we've seen on Game of Thrones. The version we know is a minimal interpretation of Martin's vision. It's a seat made of swords, but we can say it failed to make the right impression. It was simply too ergonomic to portray the true evil and torturous nature of the seat. Additionally, it lacked the steep stairs, which were substituted for a layered die that was made from stone, not iron, so it didn't look like a part of the throne itself. The show was aware of these differences, leading to a kind of meta exchange between Littlefinger and Varys, where Littlefinger says he's counted the swords on the throne, and there aren't even 200 of them. Though the exchange may have gone over the heads of those who hadn't read the novels by the time the TV series aired, it served as a canonical explanation for the differences. Of course, the reason behind these differences is much simpler. They didn't have the budget, in the beginning, to bring Martin's vision of the Iron Throne to life more accurately, especially because they had to reshoot the pilot, which put a big dent on the budget. Additionally, it was just cumbersome to make the Iron Throne truer to the novels. They would have had to build a larger set for it, and actors would have had to constantly navigate around a dangerous 10-foot set piece that posed more risks than it should. Conclusion. It is very exciting to see what the House of the Dragon will do with this more authentic representation of the royal seat. Of course, the Iron Throne will be the least of the characters' worries in this prequel, which will focus on the internal issues of House Targaryen, the demise of the dragons, and the royal civil war that would devastate Westeros. Starring Matt Smith as Prince Daemon Targaryen, Emma Darcy as Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, and Paddy Considine as King Viserys I, among many others. This TV series takes place 200 years before the events of Game of Thrones, and we expect it to be nothing short of epic. Though we don't know exactly when House of the Dragon will premiere just yet, because they haven't revealed the date, we can expect the first season in 2022 on HBO and HBO Max. Hopefully, it will do the House of Fire and Blood justice, so stay tuned for more updates.